Welcome back to the program, everyone, and we're moving on into part 5 now, which is all about the left and the right join. Now these are known as outer joins, and we'll be going into the difference between an outer join and an inner join. We'll be looking at the similarities and of course the differences, and why it's very, very important for you to understand what's going on with these left and right outer joins. Now it's another long video, so what I've done is I've split part 5 down into 2 separate videos just so you can get a grasp of the key fundamentals of what's going on with these joins. So let's head on in to SQL Server Management Studio. First of all, let's have a look at the question from the previous video. Let's see what you've got compared to what I've written in my code, and we'll take it from there. First things first, I need to be using the right database, so let's do that, and we are on Worldwide Importers. Fantastic stuff. So let's have a look at the question, which was all about the customer service team tidying up the customers on our system. Now there was quite a bit of data that they needed to see with regards to customer details, 5 columns that needed to be pulled, and there are obviously quite a few tables that we need to pull that data from. So looking down at the code, obviously the main table where most of the information is held is in the sales customers table itself. So that's where we have the customer name. Let's have a quick look at that, and we see we've got our customer name, so that fulfills the first requirement there. Customer city, well, we've got the 2 city IDs in there, so we need to link to the cities table, which we've got there, and that's in the application schema. And of course we're going to be linking that on the city ID in the cities table, and with more than likely the postal city ID, because that'll be where the actual client is located as opposed to where they want their deliveries sent to. So in this case I'm going to be selecting the postal city ID. Now you may notice that most of them are the same, but you cannot guarantee that the postal city ID and the delivery city ID are going to be the same in every instance, simply because of the fact that we've got 2 separate columns. So at some point it's more than likely that the delivery city may change as opposed to the postal city. But if we're talking about the customer itself, their sort of base of locations, we'll pull the postal city ID. So that's what we're going to be linking to the city ID in the cities tables, and that will give us our city name. Let's have a quick look at cities, which I've pseudonymized as I, and of course that's our city name, so we can pull the city name in there. Next we're looking at customer state or province, where they're from, and that is obviously in the state provinces table. So let's have a quick look at that. We've got the state province ID, country ID, etc. However, when we look at customers, there's nothing to do with the state or province ID in there, nothing to link the two. So what we're going to have to do is have a look in the next table, in the from area that we're joining with, and of course that has then got our state province ID. So we're not going to be joining this table onto customers because we can't, there's no link, but what we can do is join it onto cities. State province ID equals state province ID. So we know we can now pull our state province name from that table. Fantastic stuff. We then need to pull the country that the customer is in, country name. So if we have a look at customers quickly, Control 3 on that. We know that there's no country ID. Have a look at cities. And again, there's a state ID, but there's no country ID, so we can't link on that. We'll have a look at the next one in the list, Control 3, and we have a country ID. So we know that we can link countries table to state provinces on the country ID column using the pseudonym to make our lives easy, as you can see there, and that will pull our country name. So that one seems to link to that one, which seems to link to that one, which seems to link to customers at the very beginning. So quite a few joins on different tables going on. And last but not least, we're after the customer category. And that is, of course, in the customer categories table. So let's have a look at that. Customer category ID, start at the top, checking our table. We've got a customer category ID in that. Yes, we do. So we can link it straight away to customers using the customer category ID. So we've got all our links together. We're pulling all our columns that we're being asked for. Let's run that quickly. Execute that, and there we go. 663 rows. If you got that number yourself, then it's all good. So as you can see with this example, quite a few different tables being joined at with various other tables, not necessarily all joined to the customers table, but there's a lot going on that you need to look into in order to join all the tables together. One thing to note is, of course, you don't have to have everything in the specific order. For example, if your customer category ID, if you put that join up here, for example, then that's also fine. So it doesn't matter on the order that you put these joins in, except of course when it comes to making sure that any lower table that you see going down this list joins to tables above it. So if you remember, if we get these out of sync, then it says there's no table I to join on, and there isn't above it. Sure, it's below, but Seek will be looking to join tables on upper rows. So let's put that back in its right place. And it seems to work out fine. This one, of course, that we moved joined to the one above, so it's all good. And also, it doesn't matter which order you put your columns in. That is completely irrelevant. You can have them in any order. Normally, put them in the order that they're being asked for. However, at the end of the day, it makes no difference on that. Put them anywhere you want to. And you may have put some names against them just to make it easier on the person receiving the data that you send to them. There you go, customer. Purely up to you again if you put if you rename the columns. However, it's not required in this instance. So how did you go with the homework? With that example, all good, I hope. 663 rows. That's it for the multiple joins. On the inner join itself, let's move on to the lesson. Okay then, on to the left join itself. Let's make sure once again we're in the right database. As you can see, although we were in the right database when we were looking at the answer to the question on the end of the previous video, once we've closed that query, we've switched back to whatever it was defaulted to on this query. So let's execute that, and we're now in the right database. So the left join then, you might see it referred to in two different ways, simply written as the left join or the left outer join. And it is an outer join as opposed to an inner join, but we're specifying the direction we want the join to work by putting in left as well. Now, I simply prefer to write left join, as you can see there, knowing full well that there's no such thing as a left inner join, so it's just got to be an outer join when we're using the word left in there. So I simplify it by putting in left join. However, you may write it any way you want to, but just know that these two terms, these two joins here written in either way, are exactly the same thing and perform in exactly the same way. So then, how does an outer join differ from an inner join? Well, written, as you can see, it looks exactly the same as the inner join. So if I simply type inner here, the code looks exactly the same and functions in the same way. But the key thing to note about the left outer join is what exactly it is doing. So what we're saying here is we want all the orders from the sales order table that we have here, and if we left join onto invoices, then what we're going to do with that is we are going to pull all the invoice data onto the order data, whether there is a link via the order ID or not. So effectively we want everything from this table here, and if there is a link on the invoice table via the order ID, then we want to pull that data into our result set. So whereas with the inner join there had to be a link between both tables on the order ID specified, here we're saying show me everything from orders, and if there is a link on the order ID in the invoice table, bring that data through. So let's have a very quick look at our result set for that one. As you can see, we've got our order ID, invoice ID and invoice date. Now if we scroll down to an example for you, there you can see there's quite a few nulls approaching in our result set. So what we're saying here, and we're pulling 73,595 rows, what we're saying here is that we wanted every single order ID. Hence our from clause, we're selecting every single order ID from our orders table, and if there was a link, in the case of 17448, then we pull the invoice ID and invoice date. And that link is purely based on order ID, linking the two tables together, just like in the inner join. Same syntax and same idea. However, if we look at 17447, for example, that order ID does not exist in our invoices table. Therefore, there's no data to pull across, and we end up with nulls, or completely blank, non-existent data or lack of data in these two columns. So in this case, it's pulled data because there was an order ID in both tables. In this case, however, we have an order ID only in the orders table, but it doesn't exist in the invoice table. However, because we specified it as a left or a left outer join, then we pulled all the data from the one table and matching data from the other. Might be easier for you to get your head around if we push this table across to this side. So here's your main table, and we're doing a left join to the left onto that table there using the invoices table. So this is our table on the left, the orders table. This is effectively our table on the right, but we're going to be doing a left join onto this left hand table there. Once again, this one is the first in line down the order, the orders table, and then you've got invoices, which is further down in the list of our from clause, from area there, and this is our join itself. And this returned 73,000 rows. Now if you remember, if we change that to an inner join, we only get 70,510 rows. So that's a difference of 3,000 rows. So that is because our results said we had to have a link between the two. However, with the left join, we don't have to have that link between the orders and the invoices table, because we simply want to pull all our order IDs. But if there is by any chance a link between the invoice ID, the order ID on both tables, then we pull the data from the invoices table. Quite a tricky one to get your head around, and making sure you understand the left join and how it works between the two tables, the one above and the one you're joining to, is key to get your head around that. We'll have a quick look at another Venn diagram which will hopefully help you to get your head around this join. And here it is shown diagrammatically. So on the left is our orders table, represented by the big circle on the left. On the right is some entries, some rows from our invoicing table, represented by the circle on the right there. So area in yellow is what's being returned. So all this area on the left here is every order ID and any data in the middle, overlapping data, which matches due to the join itself. So here's our output, and as you can see, we have our 10 rows within our orders table, 10 rows within our output. But as we've only got 7 rows within our invoicing table with 7 matching order IDs, it pulls that data across, but there is nothing to link it to one of these 3 orders here. So it's got nothing to return, hence the nulls when it tries to pull data from the invoicing table. So hopefully by now you'll have more of an understanding about what's going on with the left join and the key differences between that and the inner join. So in effect, the inner join is all about returning rows in your result set that have matching values in the two tables you join together. An outer join, in this case the left one, is simply saying that we want all the values from one table, and if there is a match, then bring in the orders from the second table, wherever it's joined on. That's the key difference between the inner and any of the outer joins, of which the left join is a member of. Moving on a little bit further, we had a look at, in the inner join, what happens when we put a where clause in, and if we put that same filtering methodology within the join itself. So if we have a look at this, if we have the inner join, if you remember, it returned 228,000 rows, and even when we did the same thing in the where clause using the inner join, we return 228,000, so it's exactly the same amount of rows. So when it comes to the inner join, it doesn't matter where you put your filtering clause, whether it's in the where clause or whether you add it into the join itself. However, when we come on to outer joins, things are not as straightforward. So as you can see there, we've put a left join on the order lines table, and we're going to put the filtering clause within the join itself. Let's have a look at the rows that are returned there. As you can see, 231,000 pops up, and when we actually put it within the where clause, we end up with 228,000. So quite a big difference there. We're looking at about 3,000 rows. But why is that? Why suddenly within the left join isn't important to know where to put your filtering? And this is because simply when you put your filter within the join itself, imagine you are left joining onto a table of order lines which has already been pre-filtered with this condition here. So once it's pre-filtered, you're returning everything from your orders, and you're then left joining it onto a pre-filtered order lines table. You're still returning all your orders at the end of the day. However, if you put it within your where clause, you're simply applying that where clause to all the results that are returned when you run off this bit of code here. So there's even more further restrictions going on in your where clause. So that's basically saying run off this statement and filter every single result that we get in the end by this clause here, which is why we end up getting a lot less rows, because it's filtering the overall result set by your where clause. However, when we simply have the filtering in your left join, all that's doing is filtering your left join here. It's just filtering the order lines table pretty much before you even join it to anything else. So we're still getting everything from the orders table. We're just making sure that we left join it onto order lines after we've filtered order lines with this condition here. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense. The main thing is to highlight to you how in the inner join, putting your filtration within the join or in the where clause doesn't really make any difference. However, in the left join, it can have significant differences in your result set. So putting it in your join there basically just filters what you're joining on, filters the table, the results that you're joining on, whereas you put it in your where clause, it filters the entire result set. So just be wary of that when you start filtering on your left joins. So let's look at a quick example before we move on to the right join. In this example, the market team are prepping for another sale in an effort to get rid of the excess items that the rather inexperienced procurement team have ordered by mistake. However, they need to know what special deals are already in the database to see if they can use them or if they will need to create more. Therefore, they've asked you to provide the following two bits of data. all the stock item IDs and all of the stock group IDs. So pretty straightforward. From the stock item groups table, along with the deal description from the special deals table. So we've got our two tables. There's 1, 2, 3 columns to pull against each stock item ID where there is a link. So let's have a quick look at that. If you want to give it a go yourself, just pause the video, try it out, and when you start up again, we'll go through this little query. Right then, select star from, and we know the first one is the stock item stock groups table. Let's have a look where that is. It's in warehouse, stock groups table. Bring that in. There you go. We're going to call it as I, for example, stock item. And we've got our next table, special deals. Whereabouts is that? Here's our special deals table. So what we're going to do is do a left join against each ID where there is a link. So we need to left join to that table. So from there, simply click and hold, drag it across, and then we've got our special deal. So we're going to say as D on that one. And now let's see what we can join these two tables on. So special deals, special deal ID, stock item ID, buying group ID, stock group ID. Right, so here's our stock group ID. And we know that the stock group's here. If we select that, we've got a stock group ID in there. So that's what we're going to join the table on. Okay, so we need the stock item IDs. Stock item ID. Oh, we need to finish our join off quickly. So special deal. We have the stock group ID equals I stock group ID. So we've got our join. Now it's a left join because we want everything from the stock groups table, but any special deals come across if there is a join. So next column we need is the stock group IDs, and last but not least we need the deal description from the other table. Deal description. So there you have it, pure and simply. Let's run that off. There you can see there is no deal description for our first few results. As we scroll down the list, let's keep going, suddenly we start to get a deal description popping up. Stock item ID 1. Here's the stock group ID. This is obviously what we're joining on. So we had 7 stock group ID popping up with that one. So there you have it. You've got 456 rows. If you've got the same, and if your code looks similar to this, then you're starting to get the hang of the left outer join, which is great news. So you might be asking yourself at this stage, well, how will I know when to use the inner join and when to use the left join? Firstly, once you start to build up your experience of the database that you're working with, you'll start to recognize where tables that join together may not join fully on one set of data against the other. So if we had a look at orders and order lines, we know from working with these two tables that order lines can only exist if there is firstly an order. So we know that we can inner join these two tables together, or even if we left join them, we'd get exactly the same result, because the orders that exist in orders also exist in order lines if we're joining on the order ID. However, when it comes to invoices, we know from past experience that although there may be orders, some may have not been invoiced yet. So we know that if we wanted to see all the orders, we need to left join with the invoices if we're pulling data from both tables. So that's using our knowledge of the database itself. And then of course there is the question that's been asked. If someone asks you for a set of data, they may specify, or they may know the data themselves, that not all the rows in one table may be prevalent in the may exist in the second table as well. So it depends on the question that you get asked as well, whether you should be trying out a left join or an inner join. But primarily, all of it comes about from your knowledge of the database you're using itself. So hopefully that clears things up a little bit more on the left join, what it's used for, how it's used, the outer joins, how they differ from the inner joins, and how to actually write them and code for them. We've also looked at what happens when you filter within the join itself as opposed to within your where clause, and how your results could differ due to the placement of that filter that you add in. Just things to be wary of, and make sure you are filtering in the right way when you construct your code. Okay, so before we move on to the right join, we're going to wrap this video up. There's quite a lot to take in on the left join itself. So once you're ready, join me in part 5b, where we'll start to look at the right join and some mixed joins for you. I'll see you then.